Welcome back, class, for the final wrap-up of Lesson 12, and we're going to talk about more applications of the professional licensure and ethics as the role of design professionals in society. So continuing on, we already talked about our application story of the Certificate of Line and Grade, so we're going to move back in as a reminder to the responsible charge. We're going to spend some time on it with these slides, that it's really important to understand the ramifications and the weight of understanding responsible charge. So Article 1, Section 404.1 describes it as when a PE stamps and signs the drawing, that engineer is stating they have had responsible charge of the work. The extent of control is significant. It's not something that we take lightly as licensed engineers, and it's involved with engineering decisions, cost benefits, and what's the right application of which code. It can be very complicated, and this is why the weight of licensing is very, very important. Extent of control. This involves reviewing those plans. Notice that it talks about determining the applicability of design criteria. We will find in our experience that there's a myriad of standards. They don't all apply to the same situation. If it was, we wouldn't need licensing. And so there's an understanding that has to be applied of when certain codes apply and when they don't. Engineering decisions end up as the responsibility of the engineer in charge. So if there's a use of alternatives for design applications, using design standards, or the effect of those decisions that are made within the design process, all to be under the licensed engineer. It continues on with techniques and evaluation and the development of control. There could be things dealing with operations and maintenance, all that are conveyed underneath the license. The reviewing and approving of engineering drawings, you have to be physically present, and you'll provide a review and approval of the communication devices used for implementation. The responsible charge criteria continues as it expands upon questions that are applied, demonstration of knowledge, and various examples that are listed here on this slide for the criteria of design, methods of analysis, economics, environmental, selection of materials. Now let's talk a little bit about successor license. What does that mean? Well, let's say a civil engineer went out of business or moved on to another area and a new engineer has to take over. That's what the successor licensing part is all about. And that successor engineer is now assuming responsibility for all that past work. And this is where it's their effort to try and make sure that it is correct for what work they're doing to complete it. So an engineer can have responsibility for portions of a project. That's oftentimes why we hire a geotechnical engineer, where they focus on the soils, or a structural engineer, and maybe there's key structures. So there are various aspects, but it has to be very clear within the drawings or the plans or the reports it's being signed, and it also is important within the contracts. Make sure that practice is within the area of competence. We talked about this in the principles part of this video, that competence has to reside with the licensed engineer. And there's 4 criteria that are described here to further expand upon the importance of that area of competence. So going back to our very first presentation in class, where we talked about the 5 attributes of a profession as defined by Greenwood, we talked about systematic theory, authority, community sanction, ethical codes, and culture. And key to this discussion is really the ethical codes. There's ethical decisions. What is your responsibility under as a licensed engineer or registered engineer? What's your obligation? And how is that obligation presented to the public? Can you uphold these obligations within your area of responsibility? And what should you do to uphold these obligations? These are all so very important, and that's why having a written code of ethics or a canon are essential. Essential. It cannot be something that just relies on somebody's good morals because it varies from person to person. It has to be written, the laws are extensive, and then professional societies like ASCE has adopted canons. So, a quick little backstory. I had an experience where I was laid off after 9/11. I had been interviewed and I was excited because, boy, after having the 9/11 event occur, which was devastating, and having to go through the layoff, it was an awful situation. And then all of a sudden, I find myself with a job offer. But little did I know when I had an interview with another potential employer I had this offer that was sitting within me. It was $100,000 or more, plus benefits, and 50,000 in stock options. And what I learned as I was waiting for my interview, that the company that had given me that offer was in the conference room trying to sell their own company. They had some fine print in the offer letter that they provided me saying, none of those things will be applicable if we sell the company within 6 months. Now I ask you, is that ethical? The answer is no. But we need to be upholding it in all areas of practice, not just licensing for plans and reports, but it is also how we conduct our business. So, lesson 12 takeaways are: why should we be pursuing state licensing? What are the do's and don'ts for responsible charge and understanding that extent of control? Understanding the professional engineering license categories and also the requirements for a professional engineer, the 4 E's as I call them. What do you need to have in order to get an EIT or a PE? What are those requirements? And again, understanding that license oversight as it all ties in to Greenwood's attributes of a profession and understanding our commitments to ethics and obligations. And with that, we've completed lesson 12. Thank you.